You're listening to the Screeners Podcast Network.
From the big screen to the small screen and everything in between, this is the Screeners Podcast, where all media is appreciated, but none is safe.
Hello and welcome back to the Screeners Podcast. I'm Daniel, and we have another bonus episode coming your way. We have so many movies. It's Oscar season. Lots is coming out, and so we want to make sure we can get as many of these reviews out to you as possible. So, I'm the only regular screener here today, but don't worry, it's not just going to be me talking to you this whole episode. I have a special guest. We have done bonus episodes many times before, so you know him. You also know him from the Next Trek podcast. It's my brother, Tyler Howat. How's it going, Tyler?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I am great. Thanks for joining us for this episode.
My pleasure.
We've both been seeing a lot of movies over Christmas, so we weren't together on Christmas this year. Normally, you and I binge a lot, go to the theater like 5 or 6 times the week of Christmas, but we weren't together this year, but we still got to see a lot of movies. So we have 2 reviews coming your way today. We have All the Money in the World from Ridley Scott, as well as Downsizing. But before we get to that, we want to give a quick plug to Tyler and Chris's podcast, The Next Trek. What's been going on? I know you guys were on a mid-season break because Trek isn't airing right now. When does the show come back?
Well, Star Trek Discovery comes back next Sunday on the 7th, and so we're really excited to get back to it. We're going to be recording our episode the next Monday, so hopefully you guys will get a new Next Trek podcast sometime early next week, so maybe Wednesday. Great,
so stay on the lookout for new Next Trek in the rest of 2018. I forgot to mention, we are recording this on January 1st, so this is our first Screeners podcast of 2018. The rest of the Screeners couldn't be here, but it's still great and worth acknowledging. So let's dive right into our first review of All the Money in the World.
You carry a gun, Mr. Chase?
I never bothered. Ruins the line of your suit.
You used to be a spy. My child is a prisoner.
$17 million. All they will take is eye, his ear, the hand, and don't tell me you don't have the money.
My former father-in-law only buys the best. It's time for you to do whatever it is he pays you to do. Let's hope you're half as good as everything else he's bought.
We need to pay the ransom, Mr. Getty.
I do not have the money to spare.
No one has ever been richer than you are at this moment. What would it take for you to feel secure?
More.
I'm gonna find your son.
The IMDb description for All the Money in the World reads, the story of the kidnapping of 16-year-old John Paul Getty III and the desperate attempt by his devoted mother to convince his billionaire grandfather, Jean Paul Getty, to pay the ransom.
Isn't it John Paul?
It says Jean Paul. That's what I thought too, but it says Jean.
Jean?
Yes.
Is
John.
that
pronounced John? Okay, well,
like Jean-Luc Picard.
Well, whatever. I'm sticking with my very American way of reading it. So,
That's right.
This All the Money in the World is directed by Ridley Scott. Stars Michelle Williams, Mark Wahlberg, Christoper Plummer. And look, let's not bury the lead here. There is one major thing people have been talking about with All the Money in the World, rightfully so. This has been very much in the news. Everyone knows the story by now. The movie was completed with Kevin Spacey playing the role of John Paul Getty and the grandfather. And all of the sexual harassment allegations came out against him, which effectively ended his career, at least as of now. And rather than let the movie effectively die with his career, Ridley Scott recast the role, cast Christoper Plummer at the beginning of November of 2017. And they miraculously filmed his entire role in 9 days, had a new trailer out 3 weeks after his casting, and the film went on 4 weeks after his casting, 4 or 5 weeks, to receive multiple Golden Globe nominations, including one for Christoper Plummer, as well as Michelle Williams. That's got to be a new record. We talked about that on an earlier episode about the Golden Globe nominations. So that's pretty crazy. So, for good or for bad, we can't really talk about the film without talking about Plummer and this whole situation.
Well, how do you feel about that? I mean, it came in. I mean, I think everybody was shocked that Kevin Spacey got himself fired, but
right.
Did you think that they were going to make this deadline when Ridley Scott announced that kind of audacious plan?
Absolutely not.
Right?
100 conclusively, I was dead certain, because they said when they cast him, and again, this is beginning of November, they already had a release date of December 22nd.
Right.
And so that's less than 2 months. They said, no, we're keeping the release date. And I laughed. And
right?
I remember talking to people on Twitter. I probably tweeted it. We can probably go look at my tweets and said, there's no way they make that release date. Not even a chance. And man, I was obviously very wrong.
Yeah.
And even once they made the release date and had trailers and things and said they were done, I was still like, I'm not sure. And then the Golden Globe nominations came out. And I even said, I might have said this on our podcast a few weeks back, that I wasn't so sure if that was just kind of a publicity thing, because the Globes do that. I can conclusively say that he nails the role. Those nominations were not flukes. I don't know if you agree with me on that. What do you think of his performance? Just his performance.
I think he really nailed it. And it's honestly, it's kind of hard to imagine Kevin Spacey. You can't ignore it when you're in the theater sitting there going, how would Kevin Spacey have done that?
Yeah.
And he just nailed it. He did a great job. And now I don't think he's Oscar worthy. I don't think it was a bad performance by any means. He nailed it. He did a great job. I wasn't, my jaw didn't drop, based on what he did. And so I think it's fitting for a Golden Globe. The Golden Globe, who does reward kind of their own set of things sometimes. And I think it works.
Well, I have my own thoughts on that, but before I get to my own thoughts on that, let's hear your overall kind of general opinions of All the Money in the World.
I enjoyed it. It's weird because it's a movie that many things I liked. I don't think that there were any huge major missteps, but lots of smaller ones throughout it. I think it's overly long. I think that there's things that could have been explored a little bit more or cut. Either one. Either make this some epic length where we need to delve into Jean-Paul Getty's, deep and twisted mind and his motivations and his history a little bit more, or cut way more. I think that would have worked and make him more enigmatic. It was almost like we saw too much of him for as little as we knew about him.
I can't disagree with a lot of what you said. So overall, give me your overall thoughts. Was it a positive review, negative review?
It was good. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. We were going to get to this later. I'm not going to say everybody needs to go see it in the theater right now. It's a very good rental. It's something that you should go see, or you should get and see at some point in time. There's good performances. There's some decent tension. There's some good plotting here, but I wouldn't say we should all go scramble to see it right now.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, I'm mostly in line with you on that. Going into this, I knew nothing of the real story. Did you know much about the Getty?
I had heard of it, but in fact, you and I were texting after I saw it, and I knew nothing about the family. They're a very enigmatic family. Everybody knows the Getty name, I think, but that's about it. So yeah, I didn't know other than it had happened.
Right. Yeah, and very similar for me. I didn't really know much of the story at all, and so the best thing I can say about the movie is that this story is absolutely fascinating. Or maybe more accurately, the characters are really fascinating.
It made me want to do research.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a strength of the movie necessarily. That's more just. It's an interesting thing that happened in the real world.
It might actually even be a criticism of the movie. Shouldn't you have given me maybe a little bit more that I don't want to go? I didn't. Sure. I left the theater going, oh, I need to Google all these things.
Sure.
Whereas they should have maybe told me a little bit more.
Sure. That could be. And so what I loved the most about it was Getty. I mean, he is just a larger than life character. I mean, the payphone in the house, the investing in art, all of that stuff was super interesting. And so this movie is just very interesting.
Yes.
The genuine plea for help meeting the impenetrable wall of Getty's greed. It's really gripping. It's a very gripping story, and it's mostly well told. I think I line up with you there. The story has some problems. I agree with you that if it's way over long. It feels very long, and so it could have been a lot tighter.
What's the actual runtime?
It's like 220, something around there. So
it should have been either 2 or 3.
Well, you said make it epic long.
Right.
2.5 hours is a long movie.
I know.
And so regardless, now some movies are that long and don't feel that long. This one felt long. And so
I felt
think
every minute of those 220.
Right. And so part of the reason for that, I think, or one of the reasons, is that they don't communicate the passage of time well at all.
I agree.
I was often kind of confused as to how long had he been there, and then somebody would have a line about he's been there for months,
right.
And I was like, oh wow, really? He's been there
like
months? Like like it just, a lot of these things just didn't. They didn't do that well. They didn't communicate the passage of time, and so I struggled to kind of follow how long he had been kidnapped. So it was tough to keep track of. But aside from that, so those are really that's really the big problem is the tightness of the film, the length of the film. But aside from that, it's just a really fascinating movie. It really is. Just hearing this, it's an unbelievable story in a lot of ways. Like, it feels like a fictional story. And I know a lot of things were fictionalized, but still the story is inherently interesting. And so that kept me really invested in wanting to know how this thing ended. And obviously we're not going to dive into spoilers just yet, but I kept wanting to know what happened next.
Right.
And we already talked about Christoper Plummer. He is fantastic in this role. He really lends gravitas to Getty. He could very easily have been a very cartoonish, greedy billionaire, and I really don't think that he was.
No. I agree with you. Plummer is, I think I called him audaciously excellent. I think he steps into it, not comically like you said, but just he owns it. When he is in a scene, you feel that he is Getty. You feel that he is in control of everything, that he is larger than life, but kind of maybe a little crazy, like at least a little tiny bit of crazy, but not excessively crazy. He just is. He does a great job.
Yeah, and more than that, I feel the layers to him, because there is the overwhelming insecurity that you feel, even though he's in power. You feel the insecurity underneath, the fear, and like near the beginning of the film when when I guess what is it, John Paul II?
Yes. When
they kind of meet for the first time.
I was just thinking about this,
and he makes a sort of apology, but not really to his son, and it's an interesting moment, and I think we're really benefited by the layers that Plummer brings to it, and obviously I never saw and never will see Kevin Spacey's performance outside of the trailers that we saw, but in those trailers, to me, he seemed very weighed down by the old age makeup, and I was kind of curious to see how that turned out anyway. But all I can say is, without having seen Spacey's performance, Plummer doesn't feel like he's in old age makeup, obviously he's not
old. So it works.
He feels like a much more fitting casting anyway, regardless of the controversy or whatever. He just he is the role more than Spacey is. Man. And so I think he did a really excellent job. And Michelle Williams, she is great as well. She's always great, and she really is dedicated to the role and gives it her all. Yeah. And so the performances are fantastic. The story is gripping and interesting, and really keeps you, if you don't know the story already, like I didn't, it really keeps you wondering, how is this all going to end? What's going to happen? Yeah. So I overall, I really enjoyed the movie, even though it has some flaws.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I want to echo about Michelle Williams. I mean, she is. I feel like eventually she's going to be the Meryl Streep of her generation. She's one of those that it feels like almost every time she acts, she deserves some kind of a nomination. Sure. And especially the first one I really remember her, other than she's in Dawson's and stuff like that. But she was it Blue Valentine, right?
Yeah.
That's where, did she win or she just got nominated?
She has never won. She's
been
nominated like 4 times now.
Yeah, and I mean, she's excellent. That role too. That was the first time I really took notice of her and going, wow, she's an amazing actress. I actually expected a little bit more from her this time.
Really? Okay, so you were a little disappointed?
It's weird because she's great. I mean, again, much like Meryl Streep, it's not like you can ever say she did a bad job, acting. But I didn't feel it as much, and maybe it might have even been what they were going for, because at one point in the film, they do actually comment. They're like, "Where are the tears for your kidnapped son?"
Right.
And so maybe I'm expecting Manchester by the Sea, that one scene where it just grips you and grabs you and rips your heart out. Where this is a much more layered and certainly a larger performance by her overall.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I still the performance still worked for me. Yeah. I think the fact that she wasn't playing the classic weepy mom, she had to be strong. She was the only one who took charge of the situation. True. Nobody else really cared nearly as much as she did, and so she had to kind of take charge. And I think she played that strong, powerful figure going up, like I said earlier, against this wall, this
company wall, this corporate wall.
Yeah, exactly. So I think she played that role pretty well. So, but yeah, I think we're both. It sounds like we're both mostly on the same page with this movie. Very good, but with some issues. Which honestly, that kind of feels kind of par for the course for Ridley Scott. For Ridley Scott. He does every now and then he has like a huge hit that everybody loves for the most part, like The Martian.
The Martian. I mean, that's a nearly perfect movie for me.
Fantastic movie. But then he has misfires, and he's but for as long of a career as he's had, it's still pretty impressive.
And even his misfires, they're not garbage generally. It's just it's like, come on, this is the guy who invented Alien.
Right.
He's not going to make a trash movie generally. I guess I can't think of his entire catalog off the top of my head, but still.
So we will head into spoilers, but before we do that, we want to give our recommendations, as always, whether we recommend seeing it in theaters, spending money to rent it, streaming it on a service you already have, like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, whatever, or skipping it altogether. So, Tyler, you already touched on that, but what's your official answer?
I say, if you can see it, go see it in the theater. If you got Movie Pass, there's no reason to not go see it in the theater. But I'd say this is definitely this is a pay money to stream or rent it. This is, if it's on Netflix for free, absolutely go see it. But I'd pay the $2.99 and go see it.
Okay, and I would mostly agree. I'm a little torn on this one because I think there are far better movies in theaters at the moment.
Agreed.
So I'm hesitant to say go rush out and see it. If you've already seen Lady Bird or whatever else is out, that's the best movie out in theaters right now. So if you've already seen the better movies in theaters right now, sure, go see it in theaters. It's I think you might lose something on a rental because it is so long. It's long and it's a little bit tedious, even though it is interesting. So I feel like if I watch this for the first time at home, I might get distracted by my phone. So I don't know. I think it's worth a rental, though. It's not a bad movie at all. So I'm going to settle on rent. I have to give an actual answer. Rent. Okay? There you go. With that, let's dive into spoilers.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?
But there's so many places it would never occur to Hawk to hide. However, the reason the Führers brought me off my Alps in Austria and placed me in French cow country today is because it does occur to me. Because I'm aware what tremendous feats human beings are capable of once they abandon dignity.
And in the dream, I knew that he was going on ahead. He's fixing to make a fire somewhere out there and all that dark and all that cold. And I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. And then I woke up.
All right, so Tyler, I don't have a ton to say here in spoilers, other than really, so he makes it out alive. What do you think about the way it all kind of ended? It's obviously a true story. But.
Well, I think I want to even back up a little bit because I think it gets into how he gets out. I want to talk about Cinquanta, the Romain Duris, the kidnapper who kind of befriends Paul. I actually think he was the best part of the film.
Yeah, that's interesting. Not a lot of people are mentioning that. I had kind of forgotten about him, but now that you bring him up, yeah, he was very good. He was a very interesting character.
Yeah, at the beginning of it, you think, oh, he's just the stereotypical kidnapper. He's going to try and manipulate Paul. He's going to try and do all this other stuff. And it certainly starts out that way. But he absolutely makes you, I wouldn't say sympathize with him, but he is the way that we connect with Paul. Because Charlie Plummer plays Paul he doesn't oversell it. We don't get weepy Paul Getty. We don't get him pleading with his kidnappers. We don't get all this stuff. So he is our conduit for feeling for Paul, because something about their relationship, which we see off screen mostly, we see a few good moments on screen, a few great moments on screen, but he is the conduit for us caring about Paul, because even his kidnapper has somehow learned to really care about Paul.
Yeah, that's true, and we see that in the way he helps. One of my favorite scenes was when they were about to do the whole ear surgery where they cut off his ear, and he goes and tries to liquor him up as fast as he can. I thought that was really good.
It was so
really
good.
Yeah, it was a really like almost sweet moment in like a weird way.
Because he's desperate. I honestly, I am gonna like. I say Romain Duris for best supporting actor. Truly, at least not to win. He's, because I think either Defoe or Rockwell have it, but at least to be up there, at least to be talked about, because I think that moment he goes in, he is desperate to get Paul drunk, so that he won't feel it. And they're gonna give him, I would assume it's ether or something like that, to knock him out, but to at least desensitize him a little bit, and then he is this conduit between Gail, the mother, and the other kidnappers, and it's just, man, he does a great job. I loved every scene that he was in. He did a great job.
Yeah, he really did. I think that's a good point. And another scene that I really enjoyed was the most any scene with Getty, with Christoper Plummer's character,
rocked it, yeah.
But also the way it ends with Getty dying. What did you think about all that?
I did not. So again, like I said, this movie made me want to do a lot more Googling, because I didn't really know any details. I had no idea Getty would die by the end. No clue. For all I knew, he was still alive. Even I assumed he probably wasn't, but I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, he was like 80.
I know, but I had no idea. So I just, who knows? And some people, they live really old, but
live till they're 130.
I don't know. But I just didn't know. Either that, or I thought, we just get, one of those title cards at the end that just says, this is when he died or whatever. Right. So seeing him die on screen, have the stroke and then die, and get the really nice comeuppance of Gail being put in charge of the estate, essentially.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah, it works well, and Plummer played it along with everything else. I mean, he never chewed the scene. He never really just hammed it up. He died well. He died with a thing in his hands, an object that he had spent his life collecting in his hands, and I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, and I think you brought up another point. I mean, the whole thing with Gail taking over his estate, but that's not a compliment to the movie inherently. No. That's just a compliment to
what happened.
Wow, these people had a really weird and interesting life. Very interesting. So it's tough to separate the two. I don't know why. It's hard to articulate my feelings. We watch a lot of movies that are based on true stories, tons and tons. But for some reason, in this movie, I just feel like when I say it's such an interesting story, it doesn't feel like a compliment to the movie. It's not Ridley Scott's
fault that it's a really good story,
Right.
Yeah.
Or the writer. I don't know off the top of my head who wrote the film, but yeah, for some reason it doesn't feel like a compliment to the movie. It feels like it's just an interesting life that they led. So I don't know. My feelings on this movie are interesting. It's not amazing, but it's just good. It's just a solidly good movie.
I agree. It's a well done movie. I can't say that I have recommended it to anybody, but that's not like I've avoided it or gone against recommending it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
And I said I was going to touch on my thoughts as far as awards go. I forgot to do that in our earlier section. I definitely think Plummer is worth an Oscar nomination. Sure. Looking at this, it's a pretty crowded category.
He's not going to win, but I think it's worth a nomination.
Absolutely. I think it is absolutely. And I actually think he could win the Globe just because of the attention that would draw. personally, I think he is one of the best supporting actor performances of the year. Regardless of award stock, he would be one of my personal picks. I wouldn't be too surprised if I saw him up there as one of the eventual Oscar nominees. So we'll see how that goes. I don't think Michelle Williams. I certainly don't think she has much of a shot. That's a pretty crowded category this year. But yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised to see him there.
What the film just does well, and I don't think we've gotten to say this yet, is really hitting that wall of their family being a company. Their family is a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And there's that moment at the beginning of the film where Michelle Williams Gale is there with her whole family standing below the Getty Tower, and they're all looking up at it, and they don't realize that their grandfather is the one who owns the company. They have no idea. And then them kind of coming into the fold of the family and Getty welcoming in there in a really great scene. That's maybe is my favorite scene of the film is him kind of welcoming his family into the fold, and you just see this complex layered person that Getty was. And then just Gale's struggle. Maybe this is what I wanted from Michelle Williams. Maybe I wanted more of an Aaron Brockovich, struggle against the man.
Right.
But that she's just bashing her head against a corporation. And even though there is a very personal, especially to her, a very personal face to the corporation, it's when he already has everything in the world. Literally, his money is the title is all the money in the world.
Right.
And he's afraid of letting go what he makes in the interest, in interest one day. He makes $17 million. Just even guesstimate. Even if he only has $1 billion, he makes $17 million a day in interest.
Right.
He could give the money to her without even feeling it. But he's so scrambling to have more and more and more, and that's I think what I wanted the film to explore more. But it hits it nicely. I just want maybe more. I almost want him to be in his money bin, like Scrooge McDuck, like pulling all his coins around him and panicking a little bit more or something like that.
Yeah, and then there's one other thing we haven't talked about even once in this entire review. Mark Wahlberg. We haven't even said his name.
And
you know what? The reason for that is he does nothing of note here.
Anyone.
Yeah. There is nothing special. And I think that's not all Mark Wahlberg's fault. I think the character is very bland as well.
That doesn't mean he is bad even.
Yeah. He's not bad. He's just completely unextraordinary. There's nothing special about the character, like from a writing perspective, or from the performance. He's just kind of there. I saw somebody. I can't take credit for this joke, but somebody said online he tried to do the whole white guy thing where you just put glasses on and hope for an Oscar nomination. It's just there's just nothing there. Nothing special. So that's why I almost forgot to mention him in this entire review. And so, yeah, he's just kind of there. So, not bad. It is what it is. I think we have covered this movie enough. So let us know what you thought of All the Money in the World, whether you liked it more or less than us. We want to hear what you have to say because it's certainly an interesting movie and a newsworthy movie. This was the eyes of a lot of people were on this movie, just kind of curious to see with the whole Plummer situation. So, all right, well, that wraps up our review of All the Money in the World. So let's move on to the next film in our double feature with Downsizing.
The cause of all the catastrophes we are seeing today is overpopulation. We are proud to unveil the only practical remedy to humanity's gravest problem.
Wow. That is wild, isn't it? It's just wild.
That's Dave Johnson.
Hey, everybody.
And Carol. He never struck me as the kind of guy who'd go get small.
Downsizing takes the pressure right off.
Plus, you're really making a difference.
You mean all that crap about saving the planet?
Yeah.
Downsizing is about saving yourself. We live like kings. Got the best houses, best restaurants, Cheesecake Factory. Got 3 of them.
In Leisureland, your $52,000 translates to $12.5 million to live on for life.
Wow.
Do you understand that you will undergo the permanent and irreversible medical procedure commonly known as downsizing, and that your bodies will be approximately 0.0364% of their current mass and volume?
The IMDb description of Downsizing says, it is a social satire in which a man realizes he would have a better life if he were to shrink himself to 5 inches tall, allowing him to live in wealth and splendor. And if it was exactly that, I would have liked this movie more.
Okay, interesting. Starting right off the bat. So you didn't like this movie very much. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't. It's so weird, and I feel like I can say this about both of these movies. Okay, something I just responded to somebody on Twitter with this, and so I really liked my line, and I wish I'd put this in my own written review of it. I think that this movie, the parts of this movie are better than the sum. And so the premise is fantastic. It's awesome. It's adult Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It is, getting us to just see this weird thought experiment of what if you were able to shrink yourself and then you suddenly are super rich and all this other stuff. And then it explodes, and I'll really try and do this without spoilers, but it explodes into this global level thing, this global level saving the world essentially kind of a thing that is, I think, way out of place and too large for what Mr. Payne is actually trying to do. And so I think that the first half of the movie is really great. I like Matt Damon's character overall, although I like the secondary characters significantly better. But if it was just about this one man, dealing with his midlife crisis, I think I would love this movie. But then it becomes something way bigger, and it's out of place.
Yeah. So you mentioned Alexander Payne.
I love him.
Yeah, before I go into my thoughts overall on the film, Alexander Payne is the director of many midlife crisis movies, like Nebraska and The Descendants and Sideways. And
I forgot he did The Descendants. Frankly, it's a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, so he has this kind of niche that he kind of does pretty well. And so, obviously you like Payne very much. I do as well. I think he is a fantastic director. Yep. The Descendants was one of my favorite movies of that year. Yeah. Really impressive. So that's why I think he was a great fit for this screenplay. I think he did this was right up his alley. It's way more high concept than his other films. His other films don't have any otherworldly or kind of science fiction elements.
I don't think they have any CG in any of them.
Right. So this felt like a good fit because it got him a little out of his comfort zone, but the core of the story seemed to be the whole midlife crisis kind of thing. My thoughts on the film, much like you, it sounded great to me, and I feel very similarly to you. Our thoughts on All the Money in the World and Downsizing are very similar. The first hour of the film has a lot of genuinely interesting ideas and metaphors for midlife crisis. This had huge potential, and then it goes in extremely weird directions and never recovers. So let me start with the first hour and the stuff that I enjoyed. I think the concept of the film is solid, like I already said. It's silly, kind of, inherently, but it's solid. They explain it enough and explore it really well. Honestly, to me, so I've heard a lot of people bashing this movie and saying how much they hate this movie. That really doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand that, because at least for the first hour, I can understand if you have stronger feelings about the second hour, which we'll get to. But for this first hour, I really can't see what to hate about it, because
it's delightful,
honestly,
for the first hour. Basically,
I kind of felt that way. They explained this idea of downsizing so thoroughly that it sounded like a great idea to me. Like, I get it. Like, not that I would necessarily want to do it if I were in this world, but I totally and completely understood the motivations, because all of a sudden your wealth is multiplied, and you're helping the environment, and you're jumping up in a social class, and all this stuff. I was there for it. The emotions and connections to that idea felt really real to me overall. And I think you're right. I like the side characters better. Matt Damon's character was a bit stale. He was just kind of a generic.
He's supposed to be, though.
I agree.
He's very milquetoast. He's very Bryan Cranston at the beginning of Breaking Bad.
Yes, I do agree with that. The problem is he never really went anywhere. He just kind of stayed that way. Like I said, the whole first hour, I'm there for it. Not that it was incredible, but it was good. Like, it was solidly good to me. And then this character, I'm gonna mispronounce her name. Naklan Tran. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds like to me.
So
played by Hong Chow.
Yes, who is very good. I think she did very good in this role.
Like out of nowhere.
I think she plays the character with depth. I think the role intentionally starts out as let's laugh at the funny accent, but I think it does that in a way that is supposed to be. You're supposed to feel bad for laughing at her funny accent.
Yes.
I felt, you know what I mean? Like it starts out as the classic. Unfortunately, there's the stereotype of Asians in cinema where they're just a punchline because they talk funny and how stupid that is. And so I think she starts out that way, and then you realize, no, there's depth to this character. She has done a lot of amazing. She's an activist. She's been arrested for her activism and all this stuff.
In fact, she was downsized for her activism.
Right.
You know, that's. I hope that's not too spoilery, but that's absolutely. There are scenes in this movie, which we will get to in spoilers. There are scenes in this movie where she acts more than Matt Damon does. She acts. I mean. There are scenes where she is on screen, not only crying, but making you just about cry. And I'm fairly dead inside with my, crying during a movie. But I was like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't even believe some of the things that she was doing that just were fantastic.
Yeah,
quite a few times.
She did great. And so as a performance, she's great. Now, without delving into spoilers, she and her character kind of take Matt Damon's character on an adventure that he doesn't need to go on.
Right.
And this movie it goes from being this midlife crisis, divorce, almost dealing with white privilege kind of film that I was totally there for. And it takes it into, like you said,
is fantastic. Like, yes, if it just stuck with that.
Right.
Excellent.
So it takes it into this, like you said earlier, like global politics, almost apocalypse-driven climate change. Just it takes it into weird directions, and it just doesn't ever come back from that. And so
it tries to Payne's credit, it tries to, and again we'll explain that more in spoilers, but it just doesn't work. Once he goes off those rails, he cannot get the train back on.
And we will need to talk about that in spoilers because I don't even think it tried to. I think this movie halfway through forgot what it was trying to be, and I don't even think they tried to recover. I think halfway through the movie, the writers and director believed that this movie was something different than it needed to be inherently, and it leaves those other themes that I was actually interested in behind and just abandons them. Overall, I am much more mixed on this movie than All the Money in the World. I think the first hour is pretty good, honestly. Not incredible, but good. I pretty solidly enjoyable. And then it just goes off the rails, and it's still not horrible. Overall, I'm not hugely negative on this movie. It just has some major problems, far more than All the Money in the World. Yeah. So Tyler, anything else before we give our final recommendations and move into spoilers?
No, I think the big stuff we need to talk about in spoilers.
Yeah. We have to talk about this second and third act here, so we will do that. So what is your recommendation? Theaters, rent it, stream it, or skip it?
Oh, that's actually really hard. I don't think that there's anything, pardon this pun, which I think they're just going to keep coming. In terms of the scale of the movie, I don't think there's anything that needs to be seen on the big screen. I think you can very solidly stream it. I wouldn't even say pay the $2.99 or $4.99. I think you should just stream it. You should see it. It's funny. There's lots of good moments in it, but it doesn't really meet the unless you've got Movie Pass. Shoot, if you have Movie Pass, go see it. Go see anything, but I'd say stream it.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. You certainly don't need to see this in theaters unless you have Movie Pass and you've seen everything else. Absolutely not. Yeah, solidly stream it on a platform you already have when it comes there, because otherwise, honestly, this really any ideas that it had going for it completely loses it for me. So it's not really worth too much of a watch unless you just don't have much else to watch. So that's what I would say. Unfortunately, it is for me, Payne's first misstep. I like every one of his other films, so oh well. All right, so we are going to move into spoilers and talk about this problematic second and third act.
You're listening to the Screeners Podcast.
So I'm trying to think of exactly when it went off the rails, because it doesn't go off the rails. I don't think her arrival is what makes it go off the rails. I think it's the moment that they leave luxury. What's the name of the place they're in?
Leisure Town.
Leisure Town. I want to say that's the time where it really doesn't work, because
It starts going off rails when they start talking about how she's this activist and how she, like, you can kind of get the feeling that it's gonna. Why does she need to be this big activist? Why does she, like, you can already tell.
Because it could have just been her helping other people, you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, like, why is she, you can already tell it's going to go global. When they start talking about the global politics of downsizing, it's like, I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really impact this story. And so I was much more interested. Now, her as a character, you're right. It's not just her presence. It's because I think it could have gone in interesting directions of exploring white privilege when it shows him going to the, whatever you would call
ghetto,
it,
basically,
the slums of
the
slums of the downsizing world, I guess.
Where that a bus line goes to, like that
was
even
weird.
I think that I was way still on board with that part when like you said, when it seems as though they're digging into this white privilege, and so I was thinking I really appreciated where it went. I was thinking, wow, yeah, but somebody still has to cook the food at the Benihana that's in Leisure Town. So how is that working out? And then it answered my question. He meets, he's at this crazy party, which is like a 25-minute too long scene.
Yeah, that was very long.
Of Matt Damon as this bland white guy taking LSD or whatever it was, and
we've seen this scene like 100 times.
Gosh, I would have paid way more money, like, to see Christoph Waltz do that partying, because I think it would have been insane. But it's anyway. All that's to say, he wakes up with a hangover and runs into Knockland Tren, and that leads him down to explore the underbelly of Leisure Town. The supporting staff that has to be there necessarily to a town like that. And it really opens his eyes. He meets a dying woman. He meets, these people who can't feed themselves, who are sick or hurt or whatever, which, whose backs he essentially lives upon. But then it got global, and that's where it didn't work.
And even before it got global, it started to get in problematic areas. It started down the path of the white savior going to save slums.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So which I don't know. It didn't end up resolving that whole aspect of things. So I don't know where it was going to go, but it was starting to get a little uncomfortable.
Well, I think with that one, it didn't. Because I don't think that it was saying, like, I think, yes, you're right. It was dancing on that line a little too much of him, he's the doctor, he's going to help everybody, but he didn't. And that's where it stayed on the okay side of that line, like where the lady died anyway, he was definitely her helper. It wasn't him doing the saving and she could fall away. So
because she was a good enough character that she was a very admirable person, very putting others before herself kind of thing. So you're right, but
and kind of showing him that he needs to be that way.
Yes, yeah, and so all of those things were far more interesting. And then, like we said, it takes this whole global route where I'm trying to even I'm struggling to remember how it even gets there with Christoph Waltz and his business partner, need to take Matt Damon
for inexplicable reasons, right?
Yeah, the reasons were, we need to get Matt Damon away from Knockland Tran.
Yes, because she's dragging him down, basically.
She's dragging him down, and so she says, "Okay, I go with you too."
And that's the scene. Like, even the ridiculous conceit of the fact that she just basically bullies her way onto this trip. But then also that she's been invited numerous times to go to the original colony of the downsized people. that was dumb. I didn't like it. That scene I really liked. I mean, she performs it really well. I think it's a stupid scene, but she does a great job. And there's a few moments in this movie. One of them is when they're in church, and another's where it's toward the end when she's basically yelling at him. She knocks the walls down. I mean, she just does a great job.
Yeah. She does a great job, even though the way the movie is going is really dumb because it just doesn't even, I don't even understand the concept of why they wanted to go there, because it turns the movie from this midlife crisis idea or handling white privilege or whatever you want to say, all those things, into the world is going to end. And we need to outrun the end of the world.
It's
and
too late. All the downsizing, which was supposed to reduce our carbon footprint, that was too late to actually do anything. So we need to go hide in a mountain.
It's like the whole time I was watching it, I was just going, what is happening? Like, I don't get how we got here. This started as a story about a man who is bored with his life and dissatisfied, and then gets abandoned by his wife and divorced.
I loved that, by the way. I'm sorry to derail us here. Kristen, I didn't see it coming. I really didn't see it coming.
Okay, so I did, because one of the stupid trailers had that moment, that phone call in the trailer, and I was pissed.
I hadn't seen that. I had not watched. I think I'd only seen like a teaser or something.
So back to the global politics thing. The whole time I just didn't understand why. Like, it's almost as if they misunderstood the movie that they were trying to tell.
I agree.
The most interesting parts of the movie had nothing to do with saving the earth or climate change. Those are very valid things that movies should be made about.
Right.
But that was not ever this movie. It was never Matt Damon's characters. I keep forgetting his name. That's why I keep saying Matt Damon's characters. Paul. It was never Paul's role that he should have ever played. He was just a boring white guy. And he has no business being there. He has no discernible role to play other than tagging along with Christoph Waltz, and tagging along, for that matter, with Knockland Tran. And it's just, if we're going to do this movie, Knockland Tran should have been the main character.
She should have been the star. If it's going to be a huge, environmentalist, statement or whatever.
Forget the midlife crisis stuff and never make it about that. Just make it about this activist who gets downsized and then has to do all this stuff and sort of save the world. And it was just never. It just sounds ridiculous to talk. If you told somebody the plot of the first act and then tell them the plot of the second act, they sound like two different movies altogether.
And I think that's even why the IMDb description is just dude gets shrunk, right?
And that's interesting.
And that's interesting. Now, okay, I had a weird thought. Just tell me, am I trying to rationalize this too much? Okay, so it gets to the end. They're in the fjords. Matt Damon decides to join this essentially this cult that's gonna go hide in the mountains and save themselves. And then he changes his mind in the end, right? He gets not even halfway down the tunnel. He gets like 100 steps down the tunnel and then turns around and decides to run away. And they're gonna seal the tunnel. They're gonna block its entrance with boulders and stuff like that. And there's I think the ultra anticlimactic moment is, they're counting down, there's an alarm going off and they're counting down to when the tunnel is going to get sealed. And then you see it as though you are, a full-size person watching this tunnel get sealed. And it's just this little and then rocks fall.
That was hilarious.
It was hilarious. Oh, I loved it. I think that worked. Okay. I laughed so hard. I couldn't stop. Now, do you think that's Alexander Payne's point? Like, I'm now having this whole rethinking of this. Is that his point, where we do have this white guy who is going to go do all these things and he's going to go save the world and learn about his his white privilege and all this other stuff and the seedy underbelly of not the seedy underbelly, just the way that his world runs, and then before actually doing anything about it, just changes his mind and walks away. Is Payne trying to say something with that?
I didn't really get anything like that. So I don't know. What I got. The thing is, I don't even know what the message was trying to say. I didn't
That's
get
my
it
problem too. Yeah.
because and maybe if I rewatched it, I could get more of a message from it. But I was just so distracted by how much I didn't care about this plot. That I just kind of didn't care about the messaging because it was just everything felt so everything about the third act, second kind of end of the second, third act felt so forced, including the romantic relationship between Knockland Trant and Paul. That was so not. It just didn't make any sense because they were. That felt weird too because Paul,
it really felt weird.
Paul very clearly looked down on Knockland Trant, and I think that's the point, is he looked down on her even though she is a great character. She's kind of a hero, and but the fact of the matter is it never felt like he didn't look down on Knockland Trant. It felt like he still he hooked up with her while still looking down on her, which just felt weird. Like I don't know,
literally,
man.
it's that scene. He's taken off her prosthetic leg and is I mean, he's helping her. He's she's got a bad prosthetic on there which is chafing her skin, and he's massaging her leg. But the problem is, that was super awkward. That it was like a doctor helping his patient, and then he's like, he just makes a move on her. She's leaning back with her eyes closed, and they're sort of friends. They've known each other for a whole week maybe, or whatever it is, and yet it just happens, and he just goes for it. I'm like, this is the wrong time.
Yeah,
the thing that weird almost redeemed it was they go upstairs and Christoph Waltz's look at them. He goes upstairs and he knows exactly what they've just done, and he's just leering at them. And I absolutely lost it, like loudly, like snorted almost in the theater when that happened, because I just loved his look. Because again, I would have watched this movie if it was starring Christoph Waltz.
Well, I don't think it's a problem with Matt Damon starring in it if it stuck to the first half of the movie. It's just the problem is this movie doesn't know what it is. It's
or what it wants to be, even.
Or what it wants to be. It's trying to do too many things. It's trying to be midlife crisis, white privilege, climate change, saving the world, being an activist, international borders, global politics, all these things, and it's not doing any of them well because it never resolves the whole midlife crisis or the divorce aspect of things or the social class issues or the white privilege. It just never solves any of them. And so it starts all of these really good and interesting things that could have made a great movie and tries to do way too much.
Good. Yeah.
Exactly. So overall, this is just a misfire for me. It's not horrible. There's enough good ideas that it makes it interesting. Some funny moments, like when the little firecracker goes off and blocks the entrance. That was hilarious.
It's a good moment.
But ultimately, I just didn't care about where these characters were going or what they were doing. So, yeah. Overall, it feels like. It just feels like this was the wrong fit for a white privilege movie. So, I don't know. It just didn't quite work. Those movies are needed. I want to see those movies.
Absolutely.
I want to see a movie about a guy dealing with his white privilege or being confronted with the other cultures that he's not prepared for,
right.
And things like that. And this just
or this activist being forcibly downsized, sure. And for having to fight the powers that be or whatever.
Yeah,
that would have been a great movie too. So yeah.
It's just all too much. So, I still am excited for whatever Payne does next, because I think maybe he's just not a fit for high concept. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, because I think all his other movies are fantastic. So, well, that about does it for our bonus episode today. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at ScreenersCast. We love to talk with you guys there, interact, and hear what you guys think about these movies. You can also like us on Facebook and interact with us there. You can even, if email's your thing, man, feel free to do that. You can email us, screenerscast@gmail.com. And don't forget, the Next Trek podcast is coming back very soon. New episodes here in January as Star Trek Discovery comes back. Tyler, where can we find you online?
You can follow The Next Trek at The Next Trek on Twitter. You can follow me at Tyler Howat on Twitter as well.
All right. And as always, thanks for being here. We will see you next time.
And that's a wrap. You've heard what the screeners had to say. Now you be the critic. Head over to screenerspodcast.com and let us know what you think. See you next time.